I don't know how else to start this, but it feels like my whole world just flipped on its head. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years now. I thought we had it pretty good. We got the usual ups and downs, arguing about who left the dishes out or if I forgot to pick up milk on the way home. But honestly, I thought we were a strong team. I always saw us as one of those couples that others would point to and say, they've got it all figured out. A few months ago, though, things started feeling off. It was subtle at first, like little changes here and there. Sarah became distant. She started spending more time on her phone, and I'd catch her smiling at her screen when she thought I wasn't looking. She used to tell me everything, but now, whenever I'd ask what was going on, she'd just laugh it off or change the subject. I convinced myself I was overthinking, that maybe she was just busy with work, stressed, or needing a little extra space. We all go through phases, right? But then she started going out more. She'd say it was girls' night or a work meeting. She'd come home later than usual, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, looking more put together than she used to. She'd brush it off with a smirk and a quick, "Don't be jealous," if I even hinted at being suspicious. I didn't want to accuse her of anything based on gut feelings alone, so I tried to keep those thoughts buried, to push down that sick feeling in my stomach every time she walked out the door. I'll never forget the day I found out. It was a Friday night, and Sarah had left for another one of her work dinners. She told me not to wait up, that she'd be home late, and to just relax and enjoy the night. So I tried to, but something felt wrong, like that gnawing feeling in your gut when you know something's not right. Around midnight, I decided to grab her laptop to check if we'd gotten any updates on a vacation rental we'd booked for an upcoming trip. I logged in, and her email was already open. I didn't go looking for anything, but there it was, the smoking gun. There was an email thread between her and some guy named Jake, someone she'd never mentioned before. The subject line? Last night was incredible. My stomach dropped. I clicked on the email and saw a full chain of messages detailing every sordid detail of their night together, right down to the hotel they'd stayed at and how amazing it had been. They'd been meeting up for weeks, apparently, sneaking around right under my nose while she made excuses to me about work and friends. I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at the screen. My mind was racing, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt like I couldn't breathe. All these little moments started flashing in my mind. Her strange behavior, the late nights, the hidden phone conversations. It all suddenly made sense when Sarah finally walked through the door around 2 a.m. I was still sitting there, laptop open, waiting. She looked at me, surprised, and casually tossed her bag onto the table with that smug little smirk she'd been wearing lately. "You're still up?" she said, trying to sound playful, like nothing was out of the ordinary. I didn't bother playing games. I turned the laptop around so she could see the email to proof. Her face drained of color, and she just stood there, speechless. Finally, after a long silence, she stammered, "Mike, it's not what it looks like." I couldn't believe she had the audacity to pull that line. "Not what it looks like," I said, my voice shaking. "It's all here, Sarah. Every detail, every lie, every night you were working late." I could feel myself getting angrier with every word, all that frustration and betrayal boiling over. But she didn't even seem sorry. Instead, she crossed her arms, like she was the one being wronged, and said, "Well, maybe if you weren't so boring and predictable, I wouldn't have needed to find excitement elsewhere." That hit like a punch to the gut. All this time, I'd been trying to be a good husband, doing my part, trusting her completely. And here she was, turning it all back on me. She went on to spin some story about how she'd felt trapped and needed a release, but it all sounded hollow, like excuses she rehearsed just in case this moment ever came. The air in the room was thick with tension, and I felt like I was in a dream, a nightmare really. I didn't know whether to scream or cry or just walk out, as she rambled on about how it had just happened and how she never meant to hurt me. All I could think was how gut-wrenching it was to hear her say that. It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie unfold instead of living it. Anger was the first emotion that washed over me. I wanted to throw things, to shake her and make her understand how deeply she had betrayed me. How could she take our marriage, our life together, and throw it away for some thrill? I could feel my heart racing, blood pounding in my ears. I shot back. You think this is just some fun game? You've shattered everything we built together. But then, just as quickly, that anger shifted to sadness. I saw the reality of what had happened sink in, and it felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I thought about all the plans we had made, the future we'd talked about, the kids we wanted, the life we were supposed to share. Suddenly, it all felt like a cruel joke. I realized I was mourning not just the betrayal, but the loss of the woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we had. As she stood there, still trying to defend herself, I felt my heart breaking piece by piece. I started to question everything. Had any of it been real? Were all those moments, those intimate nights, just fabrications in her mind? I was in a whirlwind of emotions, rage, disbelief, sadness, and eventually, a strange sense of acceptance that this was a reality I now had to face. As the silence stretched between us, I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. I could see Sarah's expression shifting from defiance to uncertainty. Maybe she thought I'd forgive her, that I'd sweep this all under the rug and pretend it never happened. But I wasn't about to do that. I took a deep breath, my mind racing through all the possible paths ahead. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she was making a huge mistake, but part of me knew that wouldn't change anything. It was clear to me now that this was bigger than a single affair. It was about trust that had been broken, shattered like glass. And I had to decide if I could ever pick up those pieces again. "Sarah, I can't do this," I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I can't pretend everything's fine after this. You've betrayed me in a way that feels unforgivable." I watched as her face fell, the realization that I might be done washing over her. "I don't know what the future holds, but I can't keep living like this. I need space to figure things out." Her response was frantic, desperate. "Mike, please. I'll change. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a mistake." But her pleas felt hollow, and I could see the manipulation in her eyes. She was scared and grasping at straws. I wasn't going to fall for it again. With that, I made the decision to move out. It was a tough call, but I knew I needed distance to clear my head. I packed a few essentials and called a friend to crash at his place. I didn't want to stay in a home filled with memories tainted by betrayal. As I drove away, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak, knowing I was stepping into the unknown but finally taking control of my life again. The days that followed were a blur. I spent my time bouncing between anger and sadness, replaying that night over and over in my head. I tried to keep busy, but every corner I turned seemed to remind me of Sarah, our favorite restaurants, the parks where we'd shared lazy afternoons, even the songs we used to dance to in the living room. It felt like I was constantly haunted by memories of a life that had disintegrated. But after the initial shock wore off, I began to see things more clearly. I talked to friends, sought their advice, and even considered therapy. Each conversation peeled back another layer of pain, helping me understand that while I had loved Sarah deeply, I deserved better than the betrayal she handed me. I realized I had to reclaim my life, my happiness, and my sense of self-worth. I learned that love shouldn't feel like a burden or a game. It should be based on mutual respect, trust, and honesty. Sarah's actions forced me to confront some hard truths about our relationship that I had ignored. I realized I had been so focused on being a good husband that I had lost sight of who I was outside of that role. Eventually, I made the decision to formally end things with Sarah. I reached out to her one last time, not to rehash the past, but to get closure. She tried to manipulate the conversation again, pulling out all the stops to make me feel guilty, but I stood my ground. I told her that I wouldn't carry her mistakes anymore, that I had to prioritize my well-being. As I reflect on this experience, I know it will take time to heal. I've learned to trust my instincts and to stand up for myself, no matter how painful the truth may be. If you find yourself in a similar situation, my advice is simple. Don't ignore the red flags. Trust yourself and your feelings. You deserve a love that lifts you up, not one that drags you down. It's okay to walk away from something that no longer serves you, even if it feels like the hardest thing to do. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved into a small apartment and turned it into a space that felt entirely mine. No reminders of Sarah, no ghosts of our past. I filled the walls with pictures of friends and family, little things that reminded me of happier times. I started cooking again, experimenting with recipes that I had once enjoyed before they became intertwined with memories of Sarah's deceit. I also made it a point to reconnect with old friends. I had isolated myself so much during our marriage, often prioritizing Sarah's needs over my own relationships. It felt incredible to laugh, share stories, and just enjoy being around people who genuinely cared about me. I even joined a local hiking group, something I'd always wanted to do but had put off. Being outdoors helped clear my mind, and I found solace in nature while I worked through my feelings. Gradually, I began to rediscover myself. I took up new hobbies, like photography and painting, which allowed me to express my emotions in a different way. Art became a therapeutic outlet, helping me process the hurt and anger I had carried for so long. I learned to enjoy my own company, something I had never prioritized before. Of course, there were still days when the pain crept back in, especially when memories of Sarah would surface. I'd find myself thinking about the what-ifs and if-onlys, but I quickly reminded myself of the reasons I left. I couldn't let the shadows of the past overshadow the potential for a brighter future. As time passed, I started to feel hopeful again. I opened myself up to the idea of dating, not because I was looking for someone to fill the void left by Sarah, but because I wanted to share my life with someone who valued me. I was determined not to rush into anything, but I wanted to experience connection and love again, this time with healthy boundaries and mutual respect. Months have gone by since that fateful night, and while the scars from the betrayal will always be part of my story, they've become less painful over time. I've learned so much about myself and what I truly want in life. I now understand that relationships should be partnerships built on trust, communication, and genuine affection. I'm more aware of my own needs and boundaries than ever before. I've started dating again, slowly but surely. It's a nerve-wracking experience, but I approach it with newfound wisdom. I've learned to ask the tough questions up front about values, boundaries, and what we both want in a relationship. I'm determined not to fall back into the complacency that led me to overlook Sarah's behavior. Recently, I met someone named Emily at a gallery opening. We clicked instantly, sharing a love for art and the outdoors. She's kind and respectful, and I can see the difference in how she treats me compared to Sarah. With Emily, there's an openness and honesty that makes me feel safe to express myself without fear of judgment. We've been taking things slow, enjoying each other's company, and building a foundation of trust. I've realized that moving on doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means learning from it and using those lessons to create a better future. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving. I take pride in my growth and am excited about the possibilities ahead. For anyone out there who might find themselves in a similar situation, remember this. It's okay to prioritize yourself. Recognize your worth and don't settle for less than you deserve. Healing takes time, but every step forward is a testament to your resilience. Your story doesn't end in betrayal. It can become a narrative of strength, growth, and the pursuit of genuine love. Embrace the journey and trust that brighter days are ahead.